There is something in your home right now that is quietly pushing wealth away from you. Not a curse, not bad luck, not the economy, an object, something physical, something you probably look at every day without thinking twice. And the moment you understand what it is and why it matters, you will never see your home the same way again. I know that sounds dramatic, but stay with me because what I'm about to share comes from a tradition that has protected Jewish families through exile, through persecution, through war, through every kind of loss imaginable, and through all of it, we held on to our wealth. Not because we were lucky, because we knew things about the home, about objects, about the energy of a living space that most people were never taught. Today, I'm going to teach you those things. I have seen good people, hardworking people, people who pray and give and try their best, struggle financially for years without understanding why. And when I look at their homes, I see the same patterns, the same objects, the same mistakes. And almost every single time, once those things are removed or corrected, something shifts. Not overnight, but things begin to move again. So, let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work, the money just never stays? You earn it and somehow it disappears. Bills, emergencies, things you didn't plan for. You feel like you're running in a treadmill that never stops. You're tired. You're doing everything right, or at least everything you know how to do, and yet the abundance you feel you deserve just keeps slipping through your fingers. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. Maybe you've watched someone you love go through it. A husband who works double shifts. A daughter who can seem to get ahead, no matter what she does. Good people, faithful people, people who deserve better, that I've seen this happen to so many families. And I used to wonder when I was a young woman why some families always seem to be provided for even in hard times while others struggle despite doing everything right. I asked my grandmother about this once. She was a woman who had come from Poland with nothing. Nothing. She arrived in this country with 2 suitcases and a handful of prayers. And yet by the time I knew her, she had built a life of quiet, steady abundance. Nothing flashy, but always enough. Always more than enough. She told me something that day that I never forgot. She said, "A home is not just walls and a roof. A home is alive that it breathes. And what you place inside it either opens the door to blessing or it closes it." I was maybe 12 years old. I didn't fully understand, but I never stopped thinking about those words that I in our tradition in Jewish teaching. The home is considered sacred space, not just a place to sleep and eat. The Talmud teaches in Tractate Shabbat that a Shekinah, the divine presence, can rest within a home, but only when certain conditions are met. The home must be a place of peace, a place of truth, a place of intentional living. And there are specific objects that disrupt this, that create what we call in Kabbalah a kalipa, ashel or husk that blocks the flow of divine light and blessing into a space. And that is what I want to talk to you about today. Not superstition, not folklore, actual teaching rooted in Torah, in Talmud, in the wisdom of thousands of years of Jewish life. Because the families who have held on to wealth across generations through the worst conditions imaginable did not do it by accident. They did it because they were intentional about their homes. So today, I am going to share with you 3 things, 3 categories of objects or situations involving objects that our tradition specifically identifies as blockers of blessing. Andy, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do about each one. Not vague advice, specific actions, things you can do today in your own home that can begin to shift the flow of provision in your life. Let me start with the first one. When my grandmother finally let me into her home on a real tour, not as a guest, but as a student, she walked me through every room. And I remember she stopped in front of a shelf in the living room. There were some old family photos on it, some decorative items, and then there was a clock, a small brass clock that had stopped working years ago. The hands were frozen at 4 minutes 11. It had been sitting there silent for as long as Sanyan could remember, a keepsake from some great uncle nobody had met. My grandmother looked at that clock for a long moment. Then she turned to me and said, "This has to go." I asked her why did it was pretty. It was a piece of family history. She said, "A stopped clock in Alma is a declaration that time has stopped, that movement has stopped, that progress has stopped. You cannot invite abundance into a home where the message is that nothing moves forward." And I didn't take that seriously at the time, if I'm honest. I thought it was the kind-of old world thinking that sentimental people cling to. But years later, when I was studying the Talmud more seriously and learning Kabbalah from a teacher in Jerusalem, I came back to that memory and I found something remarkable that I am pure avid, the ethics of the fathers. There is a teaching that everything in apportioned environment speaks. The sages believe that we are constantly receiving messages from our surroundings and that those messages shape our consciousness, which shapes our actions, which shapes our results. It is not mystical nonsense. It is practical psychology dressed in ancient clothing. A stopped clock does not just sit there neutrally. Every time you look at it, your subconscious receives the message. Time is frozen. Nothing is moving. We're stuck here. And when your deepest mind believes that, your choices begin to reflect it. You stop taking risks. You stop believing things can change. You settle into the stop place without even realizing it. But in Kabbalah, there is something even deeper. The concept of tikkun, which means repair or restoration, teaches that every object in our environment is either aligned with the flow of divine energy, or it is blocking it. A broken object that remains broken in a home becomes a symbol of acceptance of brokenness. It says we have given up on fixing this, and the moment you say that about an object, some part of you begins to say it about your life too. Now pay close attention to what I'm about to say because this is the application that actually matters. This is not just about clocks. Look around your home right now in your mind as I speak. What is broken and has been broken for months? What has stopped working and you've just left it? Appliance, sitting in a corner. A lamp with a blown bulb you never replaced, a chair with a broken leg pushed against a wall. A door that doesn't close right, a drawer that sticks. In our tradition, the teaching is clear. A Jewish home is a home of repair of tikkun. You do not allow brokenness to become permanent. You either fix it or you remove it. There is no third option that is acceptable. Because what you tolerate in your physical space, you begin to tolerate in your financial life. You begin to accept that some things just don't work. And that acceptance spreads like a stain. So the first thing I want you to do this week, not someday, this week, is walk through every room in your home and identify everything that is broken and has stayed broken. Stop clocks, broken furniture, dead plants you haven't thrown away, burned out light bulbs, anything that represents something that stopped working and you haven't dealt with. Either fix it within 7 days or remove it from your home completely. This is not decoration advice. This is an act of declaring to your household, to your subconscious, and to the divine flow of provision that you do not accept stagnation. But this is only the beginning. The second thing I need to tell you is even more important, and it involves something that almost every home has, something that we've been taught is harmless, even normal. But our tradition says otherwise. There is a story in the Talmud in Tractate Baba Metzia that I think about often. It tells of a merchant in ancient times who is known throughout his community as a man of great generosity and deep faith. He had worked hard his whole life and had accumulated significant wealth. But then, over the course of a few years, everything began to slip away from him. His business slowed, his investments failed. He couldn't understand it. He went to the local sage, a man renowned for his wisdom, and he begged him for insight. The sage did something unexpected. He didn't quote scripture at him. He didn't give him a lecture. He asked to come to his home. And when he arrived, he walked through every room slowly, touching the walls, looking at the shelves, looking at the corners. He stopped at a chest in the bedroom. He asked the merchant what was inside. The merchant opened it and revealed a collection of items that had belonged to a business partner who had wronged him years ago. The partner had since died, and the merchant had kept these objects, not because they were valuable, but because they reminded him of the injustice. The sage sat down quietly and said, "You have built a shrine to your grievance. Every night you sleep next to an altar of resentment, and you wonder why abundance cannot find you." Now, I am not talking about spirits or superstition. I am talking about something the Talmud understood about human psychology long before modern science had words for it. What we surround ourselves with, emotionally, and objects that are tied to grief, resentment, loss, or shame carry those emotions into our daily experience without us even being aware of it. In Kabbalah, specifically in the Zohar, which is the foundational text of Jewish mystical teaching, there is a concept that certain objects absorb the emotional and spiritual reality of the circumstances in which they exist. When you keep an object that is tied to loss, to a time when you were broken, you keep that energy in your home. You live inside it. You breathe it. It shapes your emotional baseline in ways you cannot see, but absolutely feel. Here is what this looks like in a modern home. It is the gifts from a relationship that ended badly, still sitting on your shelf. It is the clothes from a time in your life when you were depressed, still hanging in your closet. It is the furniture from a marriage that fell apart, still in your bedroom. It is the photographs of people who deeply hurt you displayed in your living room because removing them feels like machina statement. It is the business documents from a failed venture stacked in boxes in your home office reminding you every day of that failure. These are not neutral objects. They are anchors to the worst moments of your financial and emotional life. And you are asking abundance to swim against that current every single day. This is why our tradition has always treated the home as something to curate intentionally. Tzedakah charity is not just about what you give away. It's also about what you release, what you let go of. Jewish tradition has a concept called hahat, separation, the act of deliberately removing from your personal domain what does not belong to your forward-moving life. Here is what I want you to do. And this one requires honesty. Sit down and think about the objects in your home that are tied to pain, failure, resentment, or loss. Not every object from a difficult time has to go. But ask yourself this question honestly. When I see this thing, what do I feel? If the answer is grief, anger, shame, or defeat, that object is costing you. Remove it. Give it away, sell it, or if necessary, dispose of it. You are not erasing the past. You are refusing to build your future inside it. Now, pay close attention because the third thing I'm about to share with you is the one that most people have never heard. And in my experience, it is the most powerful of all three. I want to tell you about a woman I knew years ago. I'll call her Miriam because that's not her real name, but the story is real. Miriam came from a traditional family. She kept Shabbat. She lit candles every Friday evening. She gave tzedakah regularly. By every outward measure, she was doing things right. But her financial life was a constant source of pain. Her husband had left her. She was raising 2 children alone. She worked, she saved, she prayed, and still she felt like the walls were closing in. She came to me one afternoon, and she was not asking for pity. She was asking for understanding. She wanted to know what she was missing. That I visited her home, and within 10 minutes I saw it. Her home was filled with objects that pointed downward. Dark artwork, heavy curtains that blocked all natural light, furniture arranged in ways that created heavy, closed-off corners. She had a collection of ceramic figures in her hallway, gifts she'd received over the years, and almost all of them were of people in postures of grief or defeat. Heads bowed, shoulders rounded, bodies curled in, and in the main space off her home, above the door where she entered every single day, there was nothing, just a bare wall. I asked her, "Miriam, do you have a musa on this door?" She looked at me with something between embarrassment and confusion. She said it had fallen off months ago, and she hadn't gotten around to replacing it. And that is when I told her what I'm about to tell you now, because this is the piece that changes everything. In Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy 6, ES 4-9, and again in chapter 11:13-21, God gives a very specific commandment, and itis, not a metaphor. It is not a suggestion. It is direct. He says, "Torah His words on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." This is where the musa comes from. It is a small case placed on the doorframe of a Jewish home containing a carefully handwritten scroll of those specific Torah passages. But here is what most people don't know, even many Jewish people. The musa is not a good luck charm. It is not a decoration. In Kabbalistic teaching, the doorway of a home is a threshold, a point of transition between the outer world and the sacred inner world of family and provision. The word musa itself comes from the Hebrew root meaning doorpost or threshold, and the name of God, Shaddai, appears on the outside of the case, an acronym for the Hebrew phrase meaning guardian of the doors of Israel. The Talmud in Tractate Avor records that Rabbi Judah the Prince once received a gift of great value from a Roman emperor, and in return, he sent the emperor a musa. The emperor was confused. He sent gold, and he received Otni case. Rabbi Judah sent him a message explaining, "You sent mesamething I must guard, something that can be stolen or lost. I sent you something that will guard you." This is the distinction. The musa is not something you own. It is something that owns the threshold of your home. It stands at the doorway and it declares in the language of Torah that this house is under divine protection, that the flow of blessing is welcome here, that this is a place where Shekinah can rest. When that declaration is missing, or when a musa is damaged, or when it has fallen and not been replaced, the threshold of your home has no guardian. Every time you walk through that door, you are walking through an unguarded gate. And in Kabbalistic terms, unguarded gates allow what should stay out to come in, and what should stay in to leak out. This is the object, or the absence of an object, an empty doorpost, a missing or damaged musa. This is what I see in home after home where financial blessing seems to be constantly just out of reach. Now, he raised the application, and please listen carefully, because the details matter. If you do not have a musa on the main entrance of your home, this is what I want you to do. Obtain one with a kosher scroll inside. Not a decorative case without a scroll, not a piece of jewelry, a proper music case with a handwritten parchment inside. You can find them at Jewish bookstores, at Judaica shops, or online from reputable sources. If you are not Jewish, this practice is not off limits to you. The Torah belongs to all who seek its wisdom. Many families of all backgrounds have placed a musa in their homes after learning its significance, and the results have been remarkable. The mezuzah goes on the right doorpost as you enter at the upper third of the doorframe placed diagonally with the top tilted inward toward the room. There is a blessing to say when you affix it. You can find this blessing easily. And one seed is up. You touch it when you enter and when you leave, not as a ritual gesture, but as a reminder, as a declaration. This home is covered. This threshold is guarded. Abundance is welcome here. But there is one more thing about the musa that most people never hear. The parchment inside must be checked by a qualified scribe. A sophur vary 3 to 5 years because the ink can fade or crack. And a damaged scroll is considered as if it is not there at all. Many Jewish families have mezuzah on their doors for decades without ever checking the scroll inside. And some oft-ho scrolls have become invalid without anyone knowing. If you already have a musa, and you cannot remember the last time it was checked, have it inspected. This single act has changed the trajectory of families I have known personally. I have seen a woman check her musa after years of financial struggle and discover the parchment inside had cracked, completely invalid, and she had been living under an unguarded threshold without knowing it. She had it replaced. Within 4 months, a business deal she had been chasing for 2 years finally closed. I am not saying the musa did it alone. I am saying she stopped walking through an unguarded door, and things began to move. Now let me bring this together for you because these 3 things I have shared with you are not random. They are connected by a single thread, and that thread is the teaching that your home is a living declaration of what you believe about your life. When you allow broken objects to remain broken in your home, you are declaring that stagnation is acceptable, that things don't get fixed, that you have stopped expecting repair. When you fill your home with objects tied to pain, resentment, and loss, you are declaring that the past defines your space. That grief is welcome to stay. That you are still living inside what hurt you. And when the threshold of your home is unguarded, when the doorpost is bare or the musa is damaged, you are declaring that your home is an open, unguarded space with no intentionality about what enters and what is not. These 3 declarations together create an environment where abundance simply cannot settle. Blessing needs a home that says, I am ready. I am moving forward. I am intentionally chosen. And here is what I know after decades of living this tradition and watching what happens when people take it seriously. The moment you begin to treat your home as sacred space, the moment you take these actions not because someone told you to, but because you truly understand what they mean, something shifts inside you. And when something shifts inside you, your choices change, your conversations change, your relationship to money changes, your willingness to receive changes. The Torah does not promise wealth to those who are passive. It promises that the blessing of the Lord brings wealth, and with it comes no sorrow, as Proverbs 10:22 says. But blessing flows. It moves. It needs somewhere to land. And right now, I want your home to be that place. You have worked too hard. You have waited too long. You have prayed too many prayers in an environment that was quietly working against those prayers. That change is now. This is your season, not next year. Not when things are more stable.
Now.
Because the changes I have described don't require money. They require intention. They require the courage to clear out what has held you back and the humility to invite what you truly want. Your season of struggle is ending. What you choose to do with what you've heard today will determine how quickly. I want to ask you to do one thing right now before you close this and move on with your day. Write in the comments below these 3 words. My home is ready. Write it. Because when you declare it, you are not just typing words. You are making a commitment to yourself and to the tradition that has protected families through every storm imaginable. My home is ready.
Say it. Write it.
Let it be true. And then share this with someone you love. Someone who is working hard and can't understand why the blessing keeps slipping away. Sometimes one teaching heard at the right moment is exactly what turns a life around. You might be the person who delivers that turning point to someone you care about. May your home become a place where the Shekinah rests. May your threshold be guarded and your provision steady. May everything broken be repaired, everything heavy be released, and everything that was closed begin to open. As we say, the blessing of a good home is the beginning of every good thing. Go make your home.